if you want to truly make a difference, you need to start talking to people about firearms that are not like you.
Welcome to Trigger Discipline, firearms knowledge for the novice, curious, and the experienced. We're your hosts, Nick and Pete. We believe that firearms don't have to be dangerous and terrifying. Firearms are not only a vital tool in our world, but they can be safely enjoyed with just the littlest of effort by the user. Welcome to another episode of Trigger Discipline. When it comes to advocating for almost anything in this life, there are certain challenges. Sometimes what you're advocating for goes against the grain of popular opinion. Our day-to-day lives can get in the way, and sometimes people are just more comfortable with the status quo. Now more than ever, advocating for firearm rights has become a major issue. In the past, you would see certain groups of people talk about restricting firearm rights, then not really follow up on that talk. However, at this moment, not only politicians, but media, anti-gun advocacy groups, and sadly, one of the most influential group of people, celebrities, bring up the issue of gun rights continuously again and again. So, on this episode, we've invited Jerah Hutchins to discuss some of the challenges, successes, and the ongoing fight for firearm rights. Welcome to the show, Jerah. If you could, let's start off with a quick background of yourself and how you got into the firearm industry.
I started in, I've been around guns my whole life. So I grew up around them, grew up in a hunting family, but really didn't think about them for self-defense until I was kind of in my early 20s. I just graduated from college, had a guy that was stalking me. It was really weird. And so I kind of graduated into the realm of, handguns. So I'd always been kind of a shotgun rifle sort of person, and then didn't really get into handguns until, my early 20s. And then when I was learning about them, when I was seeking out classes, when I was trying to seek out education, no offense to anybody on the show, but there weren't any, female instructors. There weren't predominant in the, not nearly like they are now. And so I was learning from men, which had its advantages and disadvantages, and I think that, they would get kind of, irritated with me, or, it wasn't fun to teach me. So I really had to learn the hard way. But, learning from men, I did get a lot of good real world experience, in that. So I kind of switched modes and went from student to teacher, and I started to develop curriculum for women the way that they learn. And I get them comfortable enough and confident enough to go into advanced training. And then they have to start, I tell them they need to start training with men at some point, or they're not going to get any of that real world experience.
Awesome. I think before I want to get into the advocacy thing, because that's what our episode's about, but I've learned a lot about you just by listening to a lot of the interviews that you've done recently and in the past. So I kind of wanted to talk about your experiences at, gun ranges, what you've done. You've helped launch a few different gun ranges so far. Can you expand on the role you've played and even how it's evolved in helping those businesses get off the ground?
Yeah, I started at the Frisco Gun Club over in Frisco, Texas, and they were breaking ground, and I kind of drove by and thought that it might be something super cool for, a place to take my clients. At the time I was, a headhunter, and I, was working with, IT professionals and high-end CFOs and things like that. And I was having to convince them to move across the country. And so I was going to use it for clients. And then I called and I was asking questions, and I was like, can I shoot full metal jacket there? Can I shoot standing, kneeling, and prone? What kind of training, are you going to have there? What kind of events are you going to have there? And, they were kind of like, hey, do you want a job? And I thought, man, that might be kind of cool to, make my career about guns. I did a lot extracurricularly, but never as a career. And so we negotiated a contract, and I went in and kind of sold all their pre-opening memberships. And, but what I got out of it, the learning that I got out of it, was I got to work with the architects and the general contractors, and I got to learn about the OSHA requirements and all that kind of stuff. And so then when you update your LinkedIn and you put all that on there, then there's, all these people coming out of the woodwork going, can you help me build my range? Can you help me with my range? What can you tell me for my range? And so I went and helped Tom Bolsh a little bit, who opened Saddle River in Conroe, just like very little consulting, just kind of telling him the do's and don'ts. And then I got recruited to go and do Defender Outdoors in Fort Worth. for that investor group. And then I just finished Texas Gun Experience in Grapevine. So we grand opened in November of last year, and we're going strong. And then, I've got a few other projects on the table. But what it really started to mean to me across this whole process of doing these 4 ranges and helping them get on the ground and training their staff and creating unique events for them to do at their ranges for their demographic, because that's how you get people into shooting. Is you have to make it fun. You can't make it like going to the military. You have to make it a fun thing that they want to do. You have to couple it with something else that they like to do. So when I do these ladies shoot and sip events, and we do machine gun mamas for Mother's Day and stuff like that, you want to make it something that they like to do. And for the men, we do a really cool smoke and guns event where we can do some standard shooting, some full auto shooting, and then we do this really kick-ass bourbon tasting afterwards, and I kind of guide people through that. So what it meant for me, what it started to evolve, the purpose it became was, I want to continue to build facilities where people can practice this really important but perishable skill. And so I want them to be able to do it affordably. I want to create community around it, because I think that's what we're missing the community around it, because kids aren't growing up maybe the way that you and I grew up, or like the generations before us, where gun safety and gun education was just the normal thing. And we've gone away from that as a society. And now me building these ranges and helping out with these ranges is kind of helping create community around it again.
So how are you marketing this to the community? How are you getting the people in the community to come to these ranges to actually participate in this, that may not have had the background in shooting and may not have had that, growing up with?
Well, I mean, social media plays a huge part of it, even though, what we do on social media has to be very grassroots. So we can't really pay, to boost certain posts on social media and things like that. Now, what Facebook has done is started to allow us to put a little bit of money behind our training, right? Because we're not selling guns or ammunition in the training class. So we were able to kind of fight back on that. And so now we can boost posts for training and things like that. So that does play a big part. What we do actually at Texas Gun Experience is we have connected with, our location is really close to DFW Airport. We're like 7 minutes from the airport. Okay. So what we've done is connected with all the hotels and like the convention centers around us. And we've gotten in really good with their concierges. We bring them in to shoot. We talk to them about it. We educate them. And therefore, it's kind of like we're training the trainer, right? Or educating someone else on it so that they can talk to all the people that are coming in for tourism, so that we can get the entertainment value out of that. But then we also plant a seed. And then I have a lot of networking groups that I go to in the community. So I'm involved in Females Advancing Business, which is a huge clientele for us, especially for women. We've created our own networking group called Sons Up, Guns Up that we're going to launch next month. So we're going to have people coming in for breakfast to shoot. That's going to be really good for people with flexible schedules or people who just want to get their practice out of the way before they go to work. Not a lot of gun ranges are going to open early to do that. So like my advice to ranges, if you want to be successful, if you want to continue in this endeavor, is you've got to be very flexible with your operating hours and get people in when it fits their schedule. So that's one of the really cool things about what the Texas Gun Experience ownership lets me do is, I have a key that gets me in the building pretty much anytime I want to within reason. And so they're allowing me to get up there at 6 or 7 a.m. to do lessons with people that wouldn't be able to do it any other time.
Absolutely.
So we have to be flexible as trainers and owners and entrepreneurs and people who run these ranges to get people in to go, we're going to do this around your schedule, and then I'm flexible during the day. So I've got a lot of clients that are moms that come in, while their kids are in school. We do private LTC classes that are custom to different people's schedules. So if we get a group of moms that can only get this LTC done while their kids are in school, well, let's get that done. Let's get them educated. Let's get them licensed. Let's get them out there.
Absolutely.
Are you doing anything on, like the groups you're talking about to get more involved in the community? Are you doing anything on the national level? Or are you seeing anything on the national level? Because I would think that it's probably a little bit easier for a range to get involved in the community, like in certain places like Texas, compared to, Illinois or California or something like that, or even Nebraska, where we're pretty loose on gun laws, but it's still not as, nobody walks around saying that they have a gun, even though there's probably over half of us that do.
Yeah, we're constantly, fighting that stigma. I've started to, work a little bit with Rachel Malone. I don't know if you know who she is, but if you don't, you really need to be. She needs to be on your radar, and she needs to be on this podcast because she's pretty cool. Basically, she goes around Texas for sure. She might do this in other states, I don't know, but she goes around and keeps people updated on gun rights hearings throughout the state. And then she does what the most important thing is she teaches them how to testify. So there's so many people that go to these hearings, and it's the same regurgitated information and opinions over and over again. And, nobody wants to hear that stuff all the time, and neither do politicians. I mean, even though they're supposed to be listening to us and working for us, they don't want to hear the same regurgitated things over and over again. So you have to be clever with it. You have to be creative with it. And she teaches you how to testify at these gun rights hearings. And so on a national level, I'm doing that. I'm really trying to get in to speak at SHOT Show next year at SHOT Show University, because I think what I'm doing and what Texas Gun Experience is doing, insofar as being open to all these really good new ideas, that's something that needs to be shared on a grandiose scale to a lot of FFL owners and a lot of gun range and gun store owners, because I think that the 2A community's become very stagnant. We're like, hey, you need to do this, but there's no creativity around it. Right. And you've got to have creativity around it if you're going to attract women, if you're going to attract minorities, if you're going to attract people who aren't used to this, who don't already love it. You got to get them immersed in it so that they do love it, and you've got to do it in a creative way. So I'm actually, I'm offering my services to a myriad of politicians, because I think that a lot of these people need firearms advisors. I think they need people teaching them what to say, what not to say, the lingo in the industry, so they don't sound stupid, so that if they're running on a 2A platform, they are actually making a difference and people are listening to them. So, I've worked with John Keating, who sits on the city council of Frisco, Texas. I taught Ken and Angie Paxton's kids how to shoot, who's the attorney general of the state of Texas. So I'm trying to work with these different politicians to help them, get on their way and speak better on their bigger platform.
Right. So you're also an instructor. How did you decide that you wanted to become an instructor?
I didn't just, it really wasn't a passion of mine, but as I moved forward in my training, my friends would see me doing this and go, I want to learn that. So I would take them to the range and I would teach them, and then they would be like, this is so much better than, and again, not to be offensive, because I think there's so many guys out there that are great instructors, but women just learn differently. And so I think as a general rule, they tend to gravitate toward females teaching them this particular skill in the beginning, right? I think that just naturally, I kind of went, you know what, if this many women of the, my friends or my friends' friends or whatever are coming to me like, I should probably get some instructor credentials. And, I saw a business opportunity, and then I also saw an opportunity to reach more people, if I was actually a credentialed professional. So, I went through the proper channels, got some NRA certifications. I'm working on some USCCA certifications now, but, and honestly, it made me a better teacher. I don't really like to always use the word instructor, because I think an instructor is just somebody that tells you what to do, but a teacher is somebody that makes sure that you understand the information. Mm-hmm. So that's, so I kind of just went through those channels, and it ended up being a really good, sort of feather in my resume when I was going to work with these different ranges, because I was able to help them write better training programs. And it's not that whatever training programs they had were bad or whatever trainers they had were bad. It's just that they didn't really have a sort of organized pathway to training for their students. And so people who were true novices didn't really know where to begin, when they were considered an experienced shooter, and when they needed to go on some sort of maintenance program. And so I think that's really important. And I think a lot of ranges don't have that. They don't have a specific pathway to training to say, this is the preferred way that you need to go through this education. Just like a university, like you would get a lesson plans from a university, or you would get a syllabus or whatever. Like, we need to have that too. And then you can drop some electives in there. There's a lot of elective classes that ranges aren't teaching that they need to teach, that really put perspective and science into the mind of the student. So they need to be teaching ballistics. They need to be teaching gun cleaning classes. They need to be teaching things like that, because the worst thing in the world is to put somebody through an introduction to handgun class, but then not really teach them the difference between full metal jacket and hollow point ammunition and why that's important, and then showing them why it's important, via ballistics, because a lot of people, I have a lot of students, and when I teach license to carry, I have a lot of students that would genuinely think it's a good idea to take cover behind a vehicle. And I'm like, your vehicle doesn't stop bullets. Like, this is so contrary to popular belief.
Right. It's like a movie show, though, so it's right. Right.
Yeah. I mean, there's areas that are better than others when it's coming, if that's all you have to take cover behind. But teaching people the difference between cover and concealment, that's a big deal. And so I think that I think ranges, they offer places, they offer guns, they offer ammunition, they offer gear. But then it's like, when you get down to the nitty gritty of teaching, being a community staple and being a community resource, do you truly have the best pathway to training for the people that are coming in? And are you actively getting them on that pathway, holding them accountable on that pathway so that they finish? Because that's how you get people to truly love the sport of shooting, and the idea and the right behind the Second Amendment is making them better at it, so that they're like, excuse me, this is not that hard to do. More people need to do it.
Yeah, I like the idea of ranges kind of creating a evolution process for the shooter, because like you said, I was lucky enough, I've been shooting for 2-3 years now, and I took an intro to handgun class, and if they wouldn't have given any sort of recommendation on what to do after that, I would have been like, yep, I know how to shoot a Glock 17, because that's how they start off. They handed every guy in the class a Glock 17 and every girl in the class a Glock 19, and if they wouldn't have given any sort of advice after that class ended, that's where you would have been. That'd have been the only gun I really felt comfortable shooting at the time.
And everybody does it differently. There's another range here in the DFW area, and their introduction to handgun class is literally, you're learning on a 22. And I don't necessarily agree with that. I think that, now there's a difference between fact and instructor opinion, and what I'm about to say is instructor opinion. But when I teach my class, and my classes are mostly women, my introduction to handgun classes are mostly women. I have a 5-lane area that is private that I teach in. I pick 10 guns. I have 10 different guns in rental inventory, and I go from smallest caliber to largest, and I don't even pull a 22, because I think that that's just enough to piss somebody off. Like, why would you even want to? You know what I mean? It's fun and cheap to plink on the range, and that's really great. But from a self-defense standpoint, unless you're super old, you're not really going to use a 22 in self-defense, or you shouldn't, because it doesn't have a lot of stopping power unless that's all you have. So I have 10 different guns in like 4 or 5 different calibers. So I'm going from 380 all the way up to 45. So you got 380s, I've got 9s, I've got a 38 special. Sometimes I pull a 40 if we have one. I pull 45s and you wouldn't believe the number of women that gravitate toward a 1911 45. Now, obviously, that's not the kind of carry piece that they're going to want,
right?
But you would be surprised at how many women are actually very proficient. And they love the weight of it. Like, they didn't think they would. It looks scary to them, but we've got to overcome that obstacle. And then it's like literally 8 out of 10 of my female students in almost every class, that's their favorite gun that they've shot, is that 1911 Kimber 45 or that Springfield Operator or whatever. And they love it. And so when I do introduction to handgun, I'm introducing you to lots of handguns. I want you to see different sizes, different calibers. I want you to see things that are striker fire. I want you to see things that have a safety and a hammer. I want you to get an actual introduction to a myriad of handguns. Plus, it's a really good way, if you do it that way, it's an awesome way for people to begin shopping for their own everyday carry without having to come back and make another stop. And then they're like, okay, well, now I know I like these 3 guns. Well, then they're going to come back and they're going to want to try those 3 guns again to make a decision. And then you can walk them through the actual process of buying that firearm so that they leave with what they know that they want. So nobody in my introduction to handgun classes have buyer's remorse. They all are getting exactly what they want. But then eventually they're going to outgrow that 380 Easy Shield, and they're going to want something different. They're going to start playing around with gear. They're going to start dressing it up with slide plates and different grips and different sights and all that kind of stuff, And so, but you're starting on that foundation and gravitating them toward it. Well, I'm sorry, but there's not a lot of people that are going to create a love for guns out of plinking 100 rounds out of a 22 in a 55-minute introduction handgun class.
Oh, absolutely. And you want to obviously, give everybody the opportunity to find out what feels good to them, and all hands are different. And, no, I think it's it's a good way to get people started, and just to see what different ammunition, what different calibers, you're comfortable with. So everybody's, at the beginning, everybody's afraid of a 45 because it's so big, it's fat, it's,
But when you're there with them and you're like, just try it, just load one round, just load one round in. If you don't like it, you don't have to shoot it again.
Absolutely.
Every time after that one round, they're like, okay, I want 5 more, you know, and then they go right back to it. And so I've never, I've had maybe 2 women not like that gun in all the years I've been teaching. And they're like, it may not be a practical gun for me, but it sure is fun.
Right.
So now they leave there and they're not afraid to shoot anything. And that's the point.
I can see that. Yeah.
Is now they're confident. Now they want to go through, they go home, they tell their husbands, their boyfriends, their dads, whatever. They're like, I shot all these guns. They took pictures of all these guns. They wrote down notes on all these guns. They're like, I shot all of them. And now I know the difference between, striker fire versus semi-auto versus revolver and what they do and the anatomy and how they work. And that's what that class is really about. And it's literally the most important class they'll ever take.
Oh, absolutely. And I guarantee that when they go home and they talk to their husbands, they talk to their boyfriends, they talk to anybody like that, they're impressed that they came back and they shot a 1911. They're impressed that they shot 40s and things like that, because when you're in that scenario and you're talking to your wife, you're talking to your girlfriend, I mean, when somebody asks a male figure, like, what do you think would be a good caliber for me? Usually 44 doesn't come to mind right off the bat, or 45 or anything like that come to mind right off the bat. So for them to be able to actually get in there and use those and be comfortable with it, I think that's a good thing. That's a great thing right there. But so in addition to being an instructor, like what other classes have you created? Because you have created other courses, correct?
I have. I really, I love doing like shorter workshops, because my demographic and the people that I'm typically dealing with are busy moms, right? Busy professionals. And they want this education, but they want it in pieces, And so with women, like guys really get into this. Guys really enjoy, going and taking these like 2-day classes, these 8-hour classes or whatever, like standing around and shooting guns all day. Women don't really like that. They want to, you're going to get a max 4 hours that, is going to be it. And so I like to create little workshops that help them, with their learning. I give them homework, things they can do at home, like how to dry fire. I have a load it, check it, rack it, drop it cycle that I put them through that they can do at home, to really get a feel, for their gun, so that they're, that they don't have to look at it every time. Because that's the point, is when you're drawing out, when you're in a situation of duress, you're not always going to be able to look at your gun and then look back at your assailant and look back at your gun. You know what I mean? So, but I have a workshop that I created called Preparing What You Wear. And I have researched a lot of different holsters, a lot of different gear out there. And the point of that whole class is teaching women how to conceal carry in a myriad of outfits, and it be comfortable and it be functional. But also that the point of that class is to teach women that a lot of gear that's already on the market, they can use, even though maybe that gear hasn't always been marketed toward them, right? So they don't have to go buy always female specific gear. There's very little things out there that women have to have a specific thing for because I'm a woman, right? Now, these concealed carry leggings that Amy Robbins with Alexo Athletica has out on the market, that's an exception, right? She created a product specifically for women and for like women runners and active women, and that's great, okay? And her product is very legit, okay? But a lot of holsters that are out on the market, a lot of things like that, with few exceptions, we can use. They just have to know that, like somebody has to teach them, somebody credible has to tell them, right? They're not going to go buy it on their own and try it on their own because they really don't know how to test it, right? So I tested, different ankle holsters, even though that's not a great way to carry. Sometimes it's an option, right? I tested different thigh holsters. I tested different purse carry holsters. Again, not a great option, but there's a way to do it. So I created this workshop to teach them that. It's almost like a little fashion show. We can show them things to wear over the holster. I've got shoulder holster options, right? I carry in a shoulder holster when I go to the movies because it's going to be easier for me to draw from the side than it is from the waist if I'm in a sitting position. I I mean, that's literally probably the only time I ever shoulder holster, but it's there for a reason. And so if you make it for women, if you make it like it's something that these are just more accessories that they buy. So holsters and guns have become like necklaces and earrings to me. Right. So, and if you create it that way and market it that way toward women, that's how they're going to understand it. And they're going to go, this is my holster and this is my everyday carry for this dress. This is my holster and this is my everyday carry for these jeans, you know, and then they're going to understand why that's important and why there's a difference in how that works. And then I also created a time management for female carry holders that takes, it's a little bit of preparing what you wear. It's a little bit of time management, and it's a little bit of situational awareness. Because if you're going to purse carry, what's the best gun to purse carry, right? A lot of women don't think about that. They don't think about the fact that they're not thinking about readying their weapon before they need it, right? Mm-hmm. And so if you're in a purse, and I teach this force on force class, I used to teach this force on force class at Defender Outdoors, where I would have these women bring their concealed carry purses. And I'm like, okay, so we're going to play a game. You know, I'm going to break into your house and we're going to see how, you know, or we're going to pretend like you're walking out of the parking lot from the mall, and I'm going to attack you, and we're going to see how quickly you can get to your gun in your purse before I shoot you in your face 19 times. And no purse carry woman has ever won. Right. Mm-hmm. So it's not that I'm necessarily trying to thwart purse carry. It's just that you got to know how to do it. And so if you have to shoot through the purse, which is likely going to be your best option, then you can't have a hammered revolver or a semi-auto, because it's going to get stuck in the fabric of the purse after your first shot. That hammer's going to come backwards and forwards and get stuck in the purse. That slide's going to come backwards and forwards, and it's going to get hung up in the fabric in the ejector port, right? So the best carry gun that you can get if you're going to carry in a purse is a hammerless revolver, and a lot of women don't think about that because they're not thinking about the physics behind it. And so I teach them how to ready their weapon. So if you're going to purse carry, ready your weapon before you leave the building. Just unzip that pocket, stick your hand in there, and be at the ready. You know, and if you're going to knife carry, there's nothing that says that you can't just have that knife open in your hand, walking, you know, inconspicuously. Have your weapon ready before you need it, because chances are you're not going to be able to get that knife out of your pocket, you know, flick it out, and then be able to stab somebody before they've already attacked you and killed you. So have your weapon ready. So these are just workshops that I've never really seen anybody else do, that I'm just kind of thinking of as I teach different classes. And then I put them out on the market. I have a situational awareness and non-lethal weapons class designed specifically for graduating seniors going to college, because they need to know that stuff, because all their parents are doing right now is telling them to be careful, but they're not teaching them how.
Right.
Yeah, I like that you're dedicating time to showing, you know, you're showing women specifically, you know, how to carry and how to carry comfortably and everything. Because, I mean, that even applies to the guys, and I'll fully admit it myself. Like, when I first started concealed carrying, I'm like, this is really uncomfortable. And like, you go online and everyone's just like, it's going to be uncomfortable. You're just going to have to deal with it. And it's like, but I feel like this is really uncomfortable, like a lot more uncomfortable than it should be. Right. So then it finally, you know, you go to the range and you talk to them about it. And my guys were lucky enough or good enough to go, well, you know, just kind of looking at you. If you move it like 2 inches to the side or whatever, you know, I do that. And I'm like, holy crap. Okay. I can still feel the gun. It's not comfortable, but sure shit isn't hurting like it was earlier. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that's really helpful.
It is. I mean, and it's never going to be like 100% comfortable. I mean, probably the most comfortable holster I've ever put on my body is a sticky holster. Just, you know, they don't slide. You can put pretty much air. And it's not really, you know, it's not really that bulky, but it does, you know, the idea of carrying every day does take some getting used to. And so they're not wrong. You know, people on the forums are not wrong about that, but you know, at the end of the day, it's about your mindset. Like, do you want to, you know, is comfort what you're going for every day, or is safety what you're going for every day? And there's a balance between the two.
So, yeah, I think right now, if we can switch it off a little bit and start talking about some advocacy stuff, since that's the topic of our show. Not that we don't enjoy listening to you talk about your experience with gun ranges, but I guess the first question is, right now, being a gun rights advocate it doesn't seem like it's a popular thing. Like, there's a lot more people out there that are pro-gun than I think people realize, and a lot of us that because we stay quiet or we stick to ourselves, and that's not necessarily, you know, because we think guns are a bad thing. It might just be the kind of people we are as gun users in general. But I guess, what advice would you give to somebody who wants to start becoming a gun rights advocate?
You know, the best piece of advice that I could give on that subject is, if you want to truly make a difference, you need to start talking to people about firearms that are not like you. One of the biggest headways that I ever made in gun rights advocacy was going into the urban communities, get really sinking myself into the African American culture, and hanging out with people like Kevin Dixie, who does, no other firearms or no other choice firearms training over in Missouri. So I was with Kevin Dixie this weekend in St. Louis, and he was kind of driving me through, the ghettos on the outskirts of St. Louis. And, I could see people, gathering in the corners, what they're doing. He was telling me about, the poverty population out there. There's no major grocery stores in any of those, urban neighborhoods. So they have to go to these, little convenience store, like gas station marts, and get their food. There's no healthy options, and it's all expensive. I mean, it's just like they're constantly, oppressed, in those areas. And I think that paying more attention to these minority communities and showing them the mindset, which is his mission. I mean, that's what he does with, Aiming for the Truth, which is his nonprofit out there, is he goes and talks to these kids and these young boys and these young men. And he teaches these African-American boys, how to be, why it's important to be a good dad, why it's important to be a good husband, and this is what firearms are truly for. This is what the Second Amendment is really about. Like, you can get yourself out of this situation. And I think that that's the biggest part of what we can do for advocacy, is really get into and sink ourselves into these minority communities and start talking to people that aren't like us. Because, I mean, what do you think? I mean, this is what the media is portraying us as, is a bunch of, gun-toting rednecks that, all we want to do is, we're bloodthirsty and we're fear-mongering and, we're racist, and all we want to do is kill people, and we're trying to protect the Second Amendment because all we want to do is kill people, and we care about our guns more than we care about kids. And what they really need to understand is we care about our guns because we care about our kids. Right. And we want to be able to protect our kids, and we want to be able to protect our families, but gun-toting white rednecks are not the only people with families. And so the light needs to start being shed, honest to God, on these minority communities, and we need to start teaching them why the Second Amendment is important to them, and why what they stand to gain from it, which is freedom, And so they're not understanding it, and we're permeating it little by little. But man, when you start talking about advocacy of the Second Amendment, you need to start talking about the history of it, and you need to start talking about how, man, it was a really well-intentioned thought. It's not even a thought. It's our right endowed to us by our Creator, okay? And then it was placed on paper by some dudes in the 1700s. That's the way it went down, okay? And so it was really well-intentioned, right, when it was written down in the Constitution, but it wasn't always done right. And so that's where the big divide is right now between minorities and the rest of us, is because they're over here fighting for history to be told the correct way. Okay. And then we're over here going, okay, but you don't like guns and you're trying to take the Second Amendment away from us. And there's got to be a balance there. So history needs to be told the right way. Okay. We need to talk about the fact that the Battle of Wounded Knee happened 100 years after the Second Amendment was ratified. We need to talk about the Kent State shooting, where, these college students were basically taken out by their government for protesting a war that probably should have never happened. We need to talk about, Black Wall Street that happened in 1921, where an entire community of African Americans was eradicated off the face of the earth for being prosperous by jealous white people. Okay. We need to talk about that stuff, and we need to teach them that history. And we need to listen to the history that they know, and then come to this understanding, right? So we need to be involved with organizations like Black Guns Matter with Mosh Toure, because that's what he's doing. We need to be involved with Aiming for the Truth with Kevin Dixie, because that's what he's doing, right? And they're trying to permeate their own communities, but they need allies for that. And we need to start opening ourselves up to that, instead of just hanging around in our own little circles of people that we know our people love guns. We know our people are about the Second Amendment. We need to be going out and talking to people that aren't.
Absolutely.
I think that's just good, plain general advice that applies to anybody who really should be expanding their horizons, really, right? I mean, a lot of people just like to stick with their own group of people because it's comfortable. And
one of the most sinking things, one of the most permeating things that I've ever really heard said about the Second Amendment, and one of the things that made me go out and start doing this on a grandiose level was at the DC rally, Maj Touré stood up and he said, look, he was like, here's the deal. At the end of the day, we're not supposed to be playing it safe. We're supposed to be the ones that are going to stick our necks out to save our rights, to continue, so that we can continue to be prosperous, so that we can continue to be free. And here's what he said. He goes, if you ain't ready to die about this shit, then you need to shut up. That's all there is to it. If you're not ready to perish over this because it's that important, then you need to shut your mouth and move on. Like, we can do it without you. And so I was like, you know what, that could not be more accurate. Like, I need to start taking some risks, and I need to start taking some chances, and I need to start going to places where, you know, even though I might not be welcome, or, you know, I might not quote unquote belong there, I need to go there. So, you know, last weekend I was in the ghetto of St. Louis, right? And that's just the way it is. That's just what we have to do. We have to start going into these places, and we have to start, because that's how you combat anything, is through education. And nobody's going to go and teach these people unless we do it.
So kind of expanding on that point then, you know, you just brought up the point that, you know, you aren't really doing anything unless you're sticking out your neck, but are there different ways that people can be effective advocates for gun rights? And just based off your different day-to-day experiences, lives, I mean, obviously some people are out there say they're busy and aren't busy, but there really are people out there who are busy and are doing what they can. Is there anything that can make those people just as effective at being advocates without, you know, marching on the steps of the Capitol?
You know, I think that, of course, the answer is yes, there is. But a big part of this is making time for it. And a big part of this is also, you know, putting your money where your mouth is. Now, I realize that, you know, people have budgets, but if you really look at what you're spending your money on, right? So, you know, if you've ever read a finance book or a money book, you know, you'll always see this line in it, you know, show me your bank account and I'll show you what's important to you. Right. Mm-hmm. So if your money, you know, so if there's not a portion of your money that isn't going to, you know, a gun rights, advocacy program, you know, like Gun Rights Coalition, or even, I mean, the NRA, I know it has its problems, but, you know, if you're not actively supporting a gun rights organization, even aiming for the truth, even these nonprofits. I mean, I have a nonprofit it's called WADE. It's the Women's Awareness and Defense Endeavor. And I raise money and I go out and teach low-income women and single moms how to shoot. You know, they got to protect their kids, you know, and there's no protector there except them. You know, they've got to do it on their own, and somebody needs to teach them the right way to do it. So the Second Amendment isn't just for people with money. So those of us who are blessed, or those of us who have a decent budget, you know, like, we need to be supporting these different programs. And you need to be sitting down and looking at your budget every month. And, you know, maybe one month you give to Gun Rights Coalition, maybe one month you give to Aiming for the Truth, maybe one month you give to Black Guns Matter, maybe one month you give to WADE, you know, and start supporting with your dollar, you know, where this is important. You know, I get that a lot of people are like, I don't want to give to an organization that's going to be wasteful with my money. That's great. Do your research. Mm-hmm. Do your research, connect with the people that are running these organizations, because I promise you, Maj Touré and Kevin Dixie and Jerah Hutchins aren't wasting your money. You know, like, we're out doing and giving of our time, you know, to make sure that this education is permeating these communities. So yes, I mean, if you don't have a lot of time, give of your dollar. You know, start having hard conversations with your family. You need to start talking to your kids about this stuff. And that's one of the best advocacies that you can do, is with your own children, and go, look, I know you're going to school every day with a bunch of clowns that think that you shouldn't own a gun, or that guns are bad, or that guns are dangerous. You need to start teaching your kids and showing them in real time, putting your kids in classes and going, this is the mindset, you know, this is what we do and don't do with guns. This is why we need to continue to keep guns. This is the history behind it and why this is so important for us. You know, I need to be able to protect you. I need to be able to protect my family as a father. I need to be able to protect my family as a mother. And your kids need to understand that that's a big weight and a big responsibility that falls upon you. And this is why that right is so important. So, you know, be an advocate in your own family, your own immediate family, and then your own extended family. I mean, have these rational conversations. I get that they can get heated, and we have to know when to end it and say, okay, right now we're going to agree to disagree, and we might revisit this later. And a lot of times people will never learn how important the Second Amendment is until something bad happens to them. I can't tell you how many students I get that are like, man, I saw you like 2 years ago and I was like, I should totally take that class, and then I got raped or I got mugged or somebody broke into my house. And now it's important to me because I know that it's real. Mm-hmm. I know the dangers out there now. Mm-hmm. And so that's one of the biggest battles that we fight in, as instructors, is trying to get people to be proactive in their safety, and then they're not. And then something bad happens to them and they're like, oh my God, I should have done that. That's their biggest regret, is why didn't I just make time to do this? Instead of going to drink wine with my friends on a Wednesday afternoon. You can miss wine with your friends one Wednesday afternoon to come and get a gun education, and if I'm going to help operate a business around your schedule, you need to make it happen. You need to get up here at 7:00 in the morning, get this done. It takes an hour to learn. You'd be surprised at how much information that you can take in and regurgitate in an hour, and it's all about your time management. And if your safety isn't the top thing on your calendar, what are you living for?
Yep. That's perfect. I like that. That's, yeah. It's a good thing. I'd rather go shoot a gun than go hang out and drink beer with people. But that's just my personality.
I'm not saying you don't need to make time for friends, but it's like, and I tell parents all the time, I'm like, okay, I get it that you want to be at every baseball game. I understand that that's important, right? But you really got to think about how much time, and this is not a popular opinion. Mm-hmm. Okay. How much time do you really need with your children? Okay. I mean, I'm serious, right? So like,
right.
Talk to us about it right now. I mean, our kids are quarantined, right? I mean, I'm at home with them all day, so yeah. I don't need much anymore.
I mean, how much time do you really need with your kids? So is it important that, if your kid has 3 baseball games, I mean, a lot of these high school kids have 3 or 4 baseball games a week mm-hmm. during the season. Is it that important that you're at every single game? Is your child really going to fall out and have a tantrum and be scarred for life if you only make 3 out of the 4 baseball games that week because you skipped a ball game to come get a gun education? Seriously?
All right. I mean
that's,
it's all just priorities. I mean, like you were saying, people, the Second Amendment isn't important until it's important. And that's just that's what people think, and that's how it is.
But these are things that, so really what we have to do as advocates is we have to like just lightly challenge this thinking and this notion of what are your, tell me your top 5 priorities, and I'm going to tell you that nearly none of them are more important than your safety, right? So yeah, making money right up there at the top, because you got to have money to be able to afford to get an education, right? So I get that. Okay, money's important, your job's important. We can work around that, right? Like I have a very flexible schedule, and if 9:30 at night is when you can come in and get this education, I'm going to make that happen. But that's me, and that is what I'm offering to my community. I hope more instructors and more gun ranges would allow that. Like, I hope that's a message that this podcast will kind of, get out into the universe. But, we have to challenge people's priorities, and we have to make them, help them understand why this is so important. And then we have to take in those people that come to us after something bad happens and not say, I told you so.
Right.
And then help them start from there.
So I have three more questions that I really want to get to before we run out of time. I think these are really important ones. One of them, and I've heard you talk about this with specifically celebrities. I know normal anti-gun groups do this too, but they blatantly just lie. And it's obvious to us, of course. It's not obvious to people who don't know anything about firearms. So they just take everything they say as the truth. And granted, when you're passionate about something, it's easy to lie or easy to stretch the truth. It's obviously important to be as factual as possible, even if it's not going to benefit your cause, maybe like in the short run. You can keep talking about something and, maybe come around to the point where your argument is being benefited. But can you, is there any place at all for stretching the truth, or should we really just be sticking to facts when we advocate?
Well, I mean, if I'm 100% with you, I mean, we've seen advocates in the 2A realm that stretch the truth. I mean, I think that, but I will tell you this. I truly believe that any negative statistic regarding firearms can be attributed to two things. It's either mindset or lack of education. And I promise you that if 2A education, if firearms education, if safety education as a general rule, like personal safety education, was taught better and taught in school, we would not have the problems that we're seeing right now. So do I think we need to stretch to the truth? No. We need to keep letting the epidemic of crime continue to speak for why we need the Second Amendment. We need to keep pointing that out. We need to be better about, and certainly the media needs to be better about pointing out situations when people defend themselves successfully with a firearm using defense education.
Yeah, those always disappear pretty quickly.
That happens a lot. Okay. And I'm holding myself accountable too. Like, I need to be sharing these stories like daily on my page and in my stories, because they happen a lot. Mm-hmm. And they kind of get swept under the rug, by the leftist media. So do I think we need to stretch the truth? No. But we do need to make it a point to be better at combating people that do stretch the truth. And I'll give you an example. I went and sort of, testified at this hearing, and I'll send you the video of my testimony later, but at this gun rights hearing that came through Dallas. And there was so much misinformation being put out there by the people sitting on these panels. And these were all House representatives. And I told them when I got up to speak, I was like, your lack of firearms knowledge is absolutely appalling. Like, you have no idea what you're talking about. I was like, and you when you blatantly spread this false information in these big platforms, you're the ones that are inciting violence, and you're the ones that are, inciting fear, because you don't know what you're talking about. I mean, there's literally science and physics backs up what we are talking about, and you have no clue. And so you really need to know what you're legislating. And we need to be, the experts in the fields. And I'm going to challenge women right now and say, you guys, you moms and you women that are about this Second Amendment thing, that just sit back and go, oh, I believe in it, but, I'm a mom and I got stuff to do. You need to be getting your behinds to these hearings. Okay, I'm sorry, but it's worth a PTO day, because we need women that can speak about this intelligently. We need female instructors that can go talk about this, because this is a women's right as much as it is just a general human right for different reasons. And we need to start talking about it, because you wouldn't believe that how the very low number of women that show up for these things. It's really terrible. And we need to go and we need to be physically and verbally challenging these House representatives and these senators and these congressmen that put out these ridiculous, statistics and information that doesn't exist, because they are literally lying to the public. And the sheeple are following them, and we need to start creating more shepherds and less sheep.
So are you trying to say like that an AR-15 can't take down a locomotive? You said that was a lie?
Right.
That's what?
Right. No, I'm saying an AR-14.
Oh,
yes.
That one's much bigger firepower, higher caliber.
So when we're talking about just getting your voice out there, it's more difficult to be heard when you're just one person, you're just one voice. Do ranges have a responsibility to take an active role in advocacy? And I mean, what would you recommend like the owners of gun ranges to do?
Yes, they have an incredible responsibility to take a role in advocacy. But here's what they don't need to do, is they need to quit towing party lines when they do it. That's where they get in trouble. Okay. And we need to stop talking about the Second Amendment as though it belongs to the Republican Party. It does not. Okay. And that's where we've gone wrong. And if we would change that, if we would steer that mindset a different way, the Second Amendment belongs to everyone. It doesn't matter if you're voting for pro-choice. It doesn't matter if you're voting for universal health care. It doesn't matter. Okay. That the Second Amendment is still for you. Okay. And I'm telling you, if politicians would just realize that, it would absolutely change their worlds. It would make it so much easier for them, but they don't get it because, and I get flack all the time because, I get people that say, oh, Jerah's a one party or a one issue voter. You're damn right I am. Because if you come at me, you could have the greatest ideas in the world. You could have the ideas that make the most financial sense. You could have the ideas that make the most economic sense. But if you tell me that you're anti-gun and that you're going to come take my guns away from me, I'm not voting for you. So yeah, I start out as a one issue voter. And then you're going to have to get me from there.
And so why is that? Why is it such a big issue for you to be a one issue to be a one issue voter? Why is the Second Amendment so big?
Because everything important in this country falls on everything important that the most important thing, the highest priority is First Amendment and Second Amendment all the time. Okay, we don't have anything else without it. But you don't have a First Amendment without a Second Amendment, so the Second Amendment comes first. That's the order.
Yeah, I think a lot of people give you crap or give anybody crap who's a one issue voter, but I mean honestly, I'm looking at the majority of the people and they're a zero issue voter. They're just I'm a Republican, I'm going to vote all Republican. Well, what's that person say? I don't know, but he's a Republican. Well, yeah, but he's also going to take money away from the schools or, same thing on the Democratic side of things. Like people just vote Democrat because they're Democrat and really they're just zero issue voters.
Man, yeah. And if you want to talk to somebody who can really shed some light on that, you need to get Kevin Dixie on here to talk about why a lot of the African-American community has just been straight Democratic voters. Like he has such a cool answer for that about why they're not more free thinkers. In that endeavor. And man, he just really blew my mind talking to me about that this weekend. So, but what I will tell you is yes, back to the original question. Yes, gun ranges, gun stores, people who own, 2A style businesses, they absolutely have a duty to advocate for it, but they need to quit advocating for it via party lines. And they need to start advocating for it for everyone. And that's one of the bigger things when I go into the African-American community and when I go into minority communities, that's the number one complaint that they have is that they don't feel comfortable going into these places because they don't feel like they belong there.
And I've heard you talk about how ranges just need to become a more active member in the community as well. And I've seen some ranges do that. And the ways that they're doing that sometimes aren't even gun related. It's like we're having a car show. Everybody come to our range and everyone comes and, looks at cars and we get a big group of people. And then it's like, well, while you're here,
Yeah, that's what we did.
Step
that's
inside.
What we did. We hosted Cars and Coffee South Lake to come over. 400 people showed up. 400 people showed up with all their badass cars. Dude, we had coffee and donuts and breakfast burritos for them and stuff. And we did a deal where, hey, if you show up and you're part of Cars and Coffee, you get to come shoot, full autos for $20, and it was an absolute riot. And it was so diverse and so awesome. There was women, men, there were, Asian people and, Black people. And there were Latinos and Latinas and they were just all in having a good time. And so, yes, absolutely. Be creative with your events, but understand that, look, I'll tell you right now, we've got a transgender person that's probably one of our best customers. And that person is incredible with guns. She knows incredible amounts of information and she's fascinating to talk to about firearms because she's just an encyclopedia of gun knowledge. And man, and I had to give her kudos because I'm it takes, it takes some guts to come into a community that you kind of know doesn't really understand you yet. And make yourself a staple in it. And she has made herself a staple at Texas Gun Experience.
Yeah.
And I'm really proud of her. And so, a lot of people have a lot of thoughts about, about the transgender community. And I get that. It's something that we're all trying to wrap our heads around and understand. But I'm telling you that even they get it. Even the Second Amendment is even for them. Okay. And, that's one of the things that, Piper Smith is out there doing, that she's trying to get done, with armed equality is she's trying to, educate people on the transgender and the LGBTQ community. But she's also trying to get them to understand, hey, this is really important. Like, this is something that you need. And I really, right, wrong, or indifferent, or how I might feel about her personally. I mean, she's had a lot of fallings out with people, in the community, but I still think that her mission is good. So, do what you do.
Yeah. And one other thing that I remember you talking about in another interview that I listened to was the way you handled hiring at your range, just to make people that are the unstereotypical gun user feel more comfortable coming in. And, the specific comment you made about what you expect to see at a gun range, I figured would be kind of funny because you're talking to 3 guys with beards and tattoos right now. So you want to expand on that?
That's exactly what I said.
Yep.
Yeah, I was like, we've got to stop, when people walk in and all they see are dudes with beards and tattoos, working at gun ranges, that's very typical. It's very stereotypical, right? And what I wanted was I wanted people to come in and see somebody that's like them, right? So, we've got this really cool lesbian chick named Carolyn that she works on the retail floor sometimes, but she also runs our shipping and receiving department. We've got African-American RSOs. We've got an African-American gunsmith. We've got a Mexican guy that works on the range that's super cool. His name's Ming. He's freaking great. And we've got, Boykin that works on the floor. He's African-American. He's been in a couple of movies, actually. I'm probably going to embarrass him when he listens to this. But you'll have to look up his IMDb, Brad Boykin. We've got women, that work there, that do well. I mean, they do well, and they're learning a lot, and when we brought them in, they didn't really know a lot, and you would be surprised in the last 6 months what they can spit out at range check-in when they're asking you what kind of guns you have, because they've got to place people. They've got to be able to have the knowledge to place people on range in the proper areas. You don't want a dude bringing his full auto in next to the mom and her 2 kids. That might not be comfortable for them. So we need to make sure that we're kind of expanding out and putting people where they need to go. So, yeah, I wanted a diverse, group of people working there that can reach demographics that I'm never going to personally be able to go and reach. And that was important.
Absolutely. I mean, when people come in and when customers come in, they have to feel comfortable. And, I full-heartedly agree to have diversity and do all of that, because it's just, it's going to help everything from top to bottom. When you're talking about advocacy, when you're talking about when you're talking about sales at the gun range, when you're talking about anything, it's going to help from top to bottom.
100%, and if we can do that and stop poo-pooing people's gear, I think we're going to move forward.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Do you have any other questions? Because I got one more question.
No, go ahead.
All right. This is my most important question. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. So you live in Texas, outside Dallas, right?
Yeah, I do.
You have a Texas accent or Southern accent, so you've clearly lived in Texas for a while.
My whole life, born and raised.
How are you, A, not a Cowboys fan, and B, a Packers fan?
This is such a great question. Oh my gosh, I can't wait to explain it.
And the guy sitting across from me is a Bears fan, so he already doesn't like this.
Oh yeah, well, he doesn't like it. He doesn't like it because his team sucked for years.
Are you kidding me?
That's why he doesn't like it.
Well, you know what? We didn't suck in 1985.
Yeah,
so.
we got the Super Bowl shuffle.
There you go.
Ooh.
There you go.
Well, see, every Bears fan is living in 1985.
Yeah, well, big deal.
And
I'm a Raiders fan, so I'm living in 1992.
Something like that. So, so I was born into. So my father is, or he's passed away now, but he was from Sicily, and he came over from Sicily and settled in Wisconsin, and Detroit first actually, and then Wisconsin. And so they moved to Texas. He lived most of his whole life in Wisconsin, and then my mom is the youngest of 4, and so he moved to Texas, and he and his cousins started this window washing company, and it went all throughout East Texas. It was a huge company, and he was the biggest Packers fan ever. Okay. And that's saying something, because everybody that lives in Wisconsin is the biggest Packers fan ever. Mm-hmm. And so That's all they have. I mean, that's all they have. Okay. It truly is. Okay. So, when I was born in Texas, my brother and I, and then two of my cousins we're the first generation Texans in our family. And, my grandfather was having none Cowboys fans in his family. None, not none. Okay. And so I remember coming home one day, and I was in the 4th grade, and I came home from school, and I told my grandma, I was like, we need to go to Walmart because I need a Dallas Cowboys t-shirt. And immediately immediately my grandpa mutes the TV. He's watching Jeopardy. Okay. Mutes the TV and goes, why in the hell do you need a Dallas Cowboys t-shirt? And I said, Grandpa, it's wear your Dallas Cowboys t-shirt to school day tomorrow. And I want to be like the other kids and wear my Dallas Cowboys t-shirt. And he goes, Janet, my grandma's name was Janet. He goes, Janet, go get John's old Green Bay t-shirt, make it fit her. And my grandmother was a seamstress. And so I went to school the next day
on Cowboys
in
Day.
An old green Cowboys Day in a Green Bay Packers t-shirt. You want to talk about getting bullied? These kids that today don't know anything about getting bullied. Go to school in the 4th grade in a Green Bay Packers t-shirt on Dallas Cowboys Day. Wear your Dallas Cowboy t-shirt to school day in the 90s when the Cowboys were good.
And the Packers were terrible, so it doesn't matter.
And the Packers were terrible. Yeah, we didn't even. Yeah, I think we won a Super Bowl in like 94 or 95, but this was like early 90s, like 91, 92. And I was like, dude, it was like the worst day of my life. But my grandpa was like, this is a very important lesson because, you have to be consistent in your fandom. Like nobody likes a fair weather fan. So you're probably going to get your ass kicked today, but you're going to have to deal with that. And so, that was my deliverance into the world of Green Bay fandom. And I've been a diehard ever since.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, we have a surprisingly large amount of Green Bay fans here in Nebraska. You're either a Broncos fan, a Chiefs fan, or a Packers fan.
Yeah, you guys don't have a professional team.
No. So kind of what the point you made about how if you live in Wisconsin, you're a Packers fan because that's all you have. That's what we have, most of us, with Husker football. That's all we have. So, and that's been rough for quite a long time. Mm-hmm. So I don't want to talk about it anymore.
I hear you on that, man. But I have a buddy.
I'm still a fan, though.
I have a buddy named Jason that's from Nebraska, and he's a Bears fan.
Of course he is, because he's smart.
Yeah. One could actually easily argue the opposite, but we won't go there because I'm trying to keep friends here. I'm trying to build bridges, not burn them. Okay.
Wow.
But
so how do you said it was your dad was from Sicily? Your grandpa?
My grandpa.
All right. So your grandpa was from Sicily, came into Detroit, and then went to Wisconsin and never stopped in Chicago?
No.
Being Italian?
But my mob family lives in Chicago, and you'll have to talk to my cousin about that because she had a layover one time coming in from Maine, and she had to go spend the night with our mob family in Chicago, and it was she was like, she's still scarred from it to this day because, and like even our family history book, like I'll have to send you an email like with pictures of it. We're very like Godfather in my family. Like we've got a family history book with the 5 families because we've got 5 families, and that came out of Sicily. It's really. I mean, I'm pretty sure they made those movies about my family.
Good.
Awesome.
So, and then I've got Native American in my family too, all the way back to like the beginning, of America. Like my 8th great grandfather was the leader of the Iroquois Confederacy during the French and Indian War. So I'm like descended from savages. It's just like, there's no other career I could ever have except guns.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I guess, I want to wrap things up and thank you again for your time. How do people get a hold of you? What's the best way? What do you prefer?
Yeah, on Facebook, I'm at Clearing the Chamber. On Instagram, I'm at Clearing the Chamber. Also on Instagram, you can find Wade. It's going to be at Wade for Women, WADE, the number 4 women, I believe is the one. So definitely follow that nonprofit because we're going to be doing a lot more with that this year. I started it out, kind of as a test run last year. We raised about $1,500, and I put 4 women through an entire academy, and now they're my ambassadors. So, and I'm sorry, it's actually Wade FOR Women, Wade FOR Women. And so we're going to be launching a lot of cool programs with that this year with my ambassadors, and really kind of start touching those low income women and single moms and get them trained up.
Awesome. Yeah, I recommend going there, following that, and donating to that. I've done some research on that as well, so it's a great program. All right, well,
thank you. Well, I appreciate you guys having me on. This has been super fun.
I know. I can't. Hopefully, you're up for doing this again in the future. We'll find something to talk about, and our podcast is more dedicated to teaching people, the ways of the gun and what's right, what's wrong. But definitely, I think we could spend some time just talking about current events, because there's plenty out there.
Absolutely. Yeah. I would love to do it anytime, man. I appreciate you guys so much, and y'all have a good night. Stay under quarantine.
Yeah, you too.
We'll try.
Thank you very much. Bye.
All right, y'all. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to Trigger Discipline. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Links are in the description.
You can view our website at triggerdiscipline.info or contact us with any suggestions or questions you have at contact@triggerdiscipline.info.